Welcome. This podcast is created to explore the many different ways people move through our world, especially when life, health, injury, circumstance, or the environment can make everyday experiences easier or harder in different ways.
We all experience the world differently at different points in our lives. By listening to one another, hope we can build more awareness, empathy, and understanding. The goal is not to define anyone by a label, but to learn from real experiences so that we can design homes, workplaces, technology, public spaces, services, and communities that work better for more people.
Today, we're going to welcome Chris Rourke. So Chris is a user-centered design and accessibility professional who I've been following for a while now on LinkedIn. And I noticed a post a few weeks ago where Chris was explaining how he deeply sliced his left index finger and how, in his words, effectively out of action. So on today's episode, we're exploring all forms of accessibility, from temporary to permanent. Today, chatting to Chris about his temporary injury is a useful reminder of an important accessibility principle, that situational or temporary disabilities often lead people to rely on features that are most commonly associated with those permanent access needs.
This matters because digital accessibility is still too often seen as something designed for other people, a niche group whose needs feel distant or irrelevant. In reality, most of us will at some point find ourselves benefiting from accessibility features due to injury, illness, fatigue, environment, or circumstance. Accessibility isn't about designing for a minority, it's about designing for real human variability, including the version of you that might need it tomorrow.
Hello and welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Chris Rourke, and I'm the founder of User Vision, which is a user experience, user-centered design, and accessibility consultancy, primarily based here in Edinburgh. And we work with clients all over the UK and internationally as well, especially in the Middle East. What we do and what my background is in this wonderful world of user experience. It's gone under names such as usability, and before that, human-computer interactions and ergonomics and all sorts of human factors names. And my training and all that goes back to that. But in our digital world, we tend to be calling it user experience, and very closely associated with that is accessibility and inclusive design. So that's really looking after the user experience, but for people with certain disabilities. That makes the technology world even more challenging very often than it already is. So that's what we do. It's a consultancy which gives us the experience of working with lots of different companies, most of which are much larger, quite a wide variety of challenges. Many of them are public sector, so it's often trying to deliver policies and and services to the public. Other ones are much more commercially driven, and I like that variety. And I also like seeing the growing awareness of both usability, user experience, and accessibility, service design, which is also related to that. And companies realizing and individuals realizing that it's in their interest to actually design for better experiences for the end users. And to me, that's been quite exciting. And over 26 years, seen quite an evolution in that whole area.
It's interesting to have you here today. Obviously, you've had a temporary impairment in just a few weeks. I'm
Mhm.
very pleased that it's very minor, but really interested in hearing about how that's shaped your experience in terms of you've worked in this space for such a long time. What was your experience? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, I will. I'll tell you about the incident and show you the results. So I was preparing a salad, I believe, and I was slicing up vegetables. And along the way, I decided to have a go at the end of my finger as well, which I did with quite a deep slice with a very new sharp knife. And at first, I thought, "Oh, this won't be anything," but better eyes looked at it and said, "You really need to look at this." And after some time in the emergency area, they didn't give me stitches, but they did give me various other things to kind of repair it as best possible, and steri strips and various things. So the body's been doing the amazing thing of repairing itself. Someone told me that the end of your finger somehow amazingly grows back. So I'm kind of willing that to happen. starfish-like, I suppose. It's fine. It's downgraded to just a Band-Aid. It was looking far more dramatic. So it is a very minor example of temporary disability, because what the effect of that was is that, especially when I had the much more substantial bandaging on there, well, my typing, which was pretty clunky enough as it is and full of typos, became virtually impossible on the left hand, at least. So I found it really awkward. And then I remembered that there's voice dictation. And I sometimes have used that, the voice memo on my phone. So there must be a way to do that I knew there was a way to do that on the computer, but I'd never really looked into it. And I discovered it, and I have become quite the fan of it over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So I've got a little hotkey so that I usually use it to reply to emails. And it, first of all, helps to avoid some of the typos that could happen before. But it's a great, simple way to get my point across. I need to do a little bit of editing afterwards, but I've become quite a fan of. And now I'm actually to the state where I can type fairly normally again. I'm still using the voice memo quite a bit, especially if it just needs to be a quick and formal reply. I can just get a few words out, and it's quicker and simpler. So it's been a unexpected benefit from this minor incident that has happened. But I think it kind of speaks to the wider issue, the challenge of temporary disabilities, because we often mention that term when we're trying to set the context of what is inclusive design, what is accessibility. At first glance, it sounds like something that some people, for better or for worse, will often dismiss it as, well, that's not relevant for me personally or for our organization. Our organization doesn't deal with people with disabilities. And that's another whole subject about how you actually discover that. But most organizations are, whether they know that or not. And within this realm of broadly badging it as disabilities, there's obviously quite a variety of severity of disabilities. But also in terms of the temporal aspect, some of them are very quite temporary, as this one, as an example. Other ones that we often cite might be, if you've had a broken arm or something, and that's the one where you use a mouse, that one is, could be a common one. So some of them are physical like that. Some of them are, visual, and auditory, and some of them are, many of them do repair after some time. And then we have other ones where it's just a general degradation of vision over time, and that temporary disability is often a good linchpin for people to understand the world of disability, because it's not something that happens to everyone else. It is something that could and is very likely to happen to you as a person at some point in your life. And as I said, fortunately, mine has been quite short term and relatively painless. But it's something, I think, as a way of trying to convey this concept of accessible design to people who are less familiar with it. I find it as a useful bridging concept, because most people can relate to either themselves or someone that they know, someone who's had that temporary disability or some kind of side benefit from actually having to explore the world of what might be termed as assistive technologies, and voice memo technology is one of those types. But yeah, so that's basically it. It's a very minor injury, I'm glad to say, but it is a small example of a temporary disability, and it is within that realm of accessible design, which thankfully my computer enabled me to do.
Great. Thank you for sharing your story. I think what you were picking up on there is there are permanent needs, there are situational needs and temporary needs.
Mm.
But also what you touched a little bit upon is that it makes it better, and that now you may have a preference for using some of these tools that you've relied on over the last few weeks, but may then continue to use going forward.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely will. If it's just a simple reply, I really just think, "Oh, it'll take me." I must think subconsciously. It'll take me a minute, probably another 30 seconds to correct the typos if I type this out, or I could take 15 seconds and just say this. And I find that's actually fine. There's less. I can just speak. The words are in my mind, and it's much easier to quickly say them and get them out in the order than I want than do this, simultaneous typing and editing that we all do when we're typing. subconsciously. So yes, I'm a newfound fan of voice dictation.
What was your experience in terms of finding what new tech you were going to use to overcome some of those barriers?
Yeah, it was actually pretty good. I quickly realized that typing with just these three fingers and on my left hand wasn't really going to work too well. So I was generally aware that that there is some kind of voice dictation thing, and I said, I know that happens, but I'm not sure how it works. How do I do this? And I did some searching in the help system or maybe some AI, and it just kind of explained where it was for my type of computer, which is a MacBook Air. And I looked into it. I found some good information from Apple on it, and it invited me to create a hotkey on my keyboard, which I do. It's a double tap of a key, and next thing I know, a little microphone pops up, and away I go. So it took me about a minute or two of sort of exploring what that solution was. Again, far simpler than someone that needs to try and discover the world of screen readers or Zoom text or any of the more substantial assistive technologies that are out there.
I think that's fascinating from a user experience expert talking about their experience trying to navigate those sorts of tools available as well.
I was fortunate that I had a baseline awareness that these kinds of solutions are out there. But I suppose there's many people that are unaware of it, and advocates such as myself and perhaps and yourselves. One of their roles, I think, is to help raise awareness amongst those people that do have disabilities. Fortunately, there is quite a lot of support in disability support groups that we work with to make them aware and enable people of the assistive technologies and other services that will help them. But yeah, I had that sort of general background, and I could discover it much to my benefit.
That's great. With all of you, is there anything you'd like to give people as a message?
Yeah, I suppose it is just that knowing that being aware that there are people with disabilities that will benefit and will be grateful if they can enable the full use of your services. And there are several enabling situations between them and you in terms of the the browser that they use, the assistive technologies that they may or may not be using, but very importantly, because I see the whole world of accessibility as almost like a bit of a handshake. The organization needs to, on its behalf, provide provide a platform, let's say a website or app, that is largely very accessible. And that could be from the simple things of alternative text to the much more elaborate things that are within the WCAG guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's their responsibility in their behalf. The user comes along on on their behalf to be using maybe some type of assistive technology, whether that could be built into their system already, such as the voice dictation, or something that needs to be bolted on in some case, or maybe a special device or switch or something like that. And it's just a simple story of collaboration, the two halves having to meet.
Thank you, Chris. You said you really relied on and you've converted more now into speech, like using the speech part of the thing. So it's actually changed your behavior in general, right? So you're not going back now because you have more use of your hand, because you have
I will use it more often, and I'm even getting over some of these social aspects of it. For instance, when I'm working from home, I'm often found up in my office talking to myself, as it appears, and talking in a strange way, saying, okay, giving a sentence and saying full stop or new line and all these things, just to make sure that I'm pushing the voice dictation in the right way, and that I'll have to do less tidying up it afterwards. I'm a big fan of voice dictation now for mobile phone, which I had occasionally used for like an important interview, but very occasionally. And now just using it as my own recording device, which you can always delete it if it's really not worth anything. But Yeah, it has made a more substantial behavior change, I think, for me.
We thank Chris for sharing his experience so openly. We know these conversations can be personal, and we really appreciate his honesty.
We hope this helps other beautifully diverse humans think differently, consider how others may experience the world around us, and create a more inclusive world.